713-780-3776. So we finally got Matt Chapman to sign. We've been waiting for Matt Chapman to sign so we could kind of compare and contrast Alex Bregman, Chapman entering free agency a year earlier than Bregman. Chapman I don't think is as good as Alex Bregman, but I think it's close. I think it's comparable.
You and I kind of did the whiteboard a week or so ago where Chapman may be an edge defensively and power, but Bregman better plate discipline, better hit for average, and the defense isn't that far off.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The contract on Chapman is $20 million in year one, $18 million in year two, $16 million in year three. He has two opt-outs, so I guess he gets the only time he can get an opt-out is after the first year, after the second year. You do the math on that though, and it's $18 million per year for 3 years. Even if we assume that Alex Bregman is a better player than Matt Chapman, which is a fair assumption, is he $5 million better? Is he $7 million better per year? Like, how much million is Alex Bregman better than Chapman? I have it at about $5 million better per year than Matt Chapman.
Yeah, if you're going just by what you would average out, what he's had in the last two contracts, I guess it is with the Astros, it'd be around 25 to 30. So, yeah, anywhere from 5 to 7 is fair.
Right, but I'm talking about, like, his value to
Going
a team.
forward.
Like if he played, like this year like he did last year, or even if you just take 2023 numbers, how much money better is Alex Bregman than Matt Chapman? I estimate about $5 million. If we assume that it's $5 million, and let's be kind to Alex Bregman, and let's give him the extra year, that puts him at $92 million over 4 years if you're looking at it from a Matt Chapman as your baseline and then adding Alex Bregman $5 million more. So, like, the idea that Bregman was going to get $300 million for 10 years has always been asinine. It's always been crazy. The Athletic had a story today where this is like contract extension season. Like, this is when you see a lot of contracts get done 3 weeks prior to the regular season. You see guys who are pre-arbitration deals. That's why the Killer G's were talking about Yiner Diaz, and who was the other one that they were talking about? Jeremy Pena. Jeremy Pena has even been asked about contracts. Like, well, if they're willing to talk, we'll always listen. So this is kind of this is contract extension season. So they had some candidates that could be extended. Alex Bregman was one of those candidates. The Athletic projects an Alex Bregman extension at 7 years, $210 million. So that's $30 million per year. Do you do 7 years, 210? 713-780-3776. What would you do, Blankers? Would you give him 7 years for
7 years is too much in my mind, and $30 million a year, based on the fact that I think his stats are declining. I think he's on the. I don't think that you're going to see. I think, Brian, it might have been a day that you and I were finishing.
Yeah, I had what my cash or trash it like last week was based on. I think Bregman's going to sign something similar to Bellinger, which was 3 years, $80 million.
Yeah, to me, I don't mind, and I think that the Astros would definitely probably entertain a 3-year deal. I don't think they're gonna even think twice about saying no to a 7-year deal. I think 7 years, based on where he's at, the fact that he seems to be on the decline overall his entire game, but that he's not going to be getting any better. We're not going to see this big spike in production and all that stuff. I think 7 years is too much. I think $30 million a year is too much, and that's why you're right. When we were talking about Chapman, I was real curious because the talk was that Chapman was going to get all this money still, no matter what, and I was like, I don't know, we'll see. But when Chapman signed that, my eyebrows went up. I was like, okay, wait a minute now, because now Bregman's hating that, and Bregman's going to have to play his ass off this year if he thinks he's worth a whole hell of a lot more. But if Bregman wants to sit down and look at those numbers as kind of a benchmark and go, hey, like to Jeremy's point, I'll even throw $5 more million on that per year for 3 or 4 years, I'm in on that conversation, but I'm not going to 30 a year.
Yeah, there's just, there's no way the Astros would even remotely consider 7 years. I don't even think they'd go to 6, which has kind of been their limit on most guys. I think that at most, because he is going into his age 30 season, would be 5 years, and I really even wouldn't want that, especially out of $30 million AAV. I really do think you're looking at something pretty close to what Bellinger got, that 3-year $80 million. It's probably a little bit less. I think they probably max him out at $25 per year. So let's say 3 years, $75 million. If that is the offer, I would certainly do it on Bregman.
Yeah.
Would the Astros do it? I think obviously contract length would be fine. AAV is obviously a little bit on the high side when you compare it to Chapman, but I'd be willing to go 3 years, $75 to keep Bregman.
I think they would do that. I think the Astros would do that. Now, it's nowhere near, like, okay, let's play the game here a little bit, because Bregman's going to want way more than that.
Of course.
Scott Boras is cool with his players wanting way more than that, and Scott Boras isn't clamoring for his players to sign early. Blake Snell still unsigned. Chapman was a Boras guy, still unsigned. I think there's
Montgomery
Bellinger was
also.
a Boras guy, and then that was the Boras four.
Yeah.
The Boras four that they hadn't signed until recently.
Right.
Bellinger, Chapman, Snell, and Jordan Montgomery. Two of those guys are still unsigned. Now that is telling you something. It is telling you that what the players think they're worth isn't the actual marketplace anymore, and you could throw regional sports networks as to the reasons why. One of the reasons why I think general managers are just wisening up and not signing 30-year-olds to 7-year deals because it's not smart business. So I do think that Bregman comes back into the Bellinger. I think it's a good comp. I think he's going to make more than Chapman, but showing you the demand on Chapman, I think is going to have an effect on Alex Bregman. Now, the timeline on when the Astros could re-sign Bregman, because they're not going to go 7 for 210. They're not going to go 300 for 10, especially seeing this offseason and what free agents got. If the Astros were to bring back Bregman on a Bellinger deal and a Chapman super deal, it's going to be this time next year. Yeah. It's going to be late February, early March.
Yeah, it's going to be when Scott Boras, because Scott Boras puckered a little bit when he started seeing that Chapman wasn't getting the market and that he's got other clients in line. And this takes me all the way back to when it really started to go against the super agents and the super contracts, all the way back to Keuchel, and then he had to scramble. But he has to see that the writing's on the wall, that the teams aren't just throwing out money the way they used to, and they're certainly not doing it for 5 to 10 year deals at massive losses on the final 3 or 4 years of a return on investment on a long-term deal, and that's got to worry the hell out of him. And that's why I said Bregman, if he's going to change the narrative at all to try and earn extra money, he really is playing for his new contract this season, and he's got to go off the charts.
But absolutely, that's 100% true. I just think the timeline's what's impacted the most with Alex
And I think
Bregman.
if the Astros say no, I don't think it's because of the years. Obviously, it's not because of the AAV. But if they have to wait to basically, let's say, this exact day next year, March 4th, I mean, at that point, if you don't get Bregman, if you wait that long on Bregman and you miss, then what is your option? Unless you're comfortable with whoever is behind him in AAA, your options are pretty much at that point dried up.
It's the DiVincenzo guy and it's Billy Wagner's son.
Yep.
But you're right. Like if maybe you don't feel like they're there, maybe you already make a move because you're not willing to wait on Bregman until late in spring training.
But I also think, to your point on if we could be here next year, or he could be there at about the same time, is because unless he does play his tail off, no team is going to be jumping to the phone as quick as they can and rushing to get Alex Bregman signed for 7 years and $25-30 million. Because if he doesn't if he's just the same old Alex Bregman, if he's expecting to break the bank or really get a monster deal, he is going to be sitting here this long next year.
And if he gets the 7-year $210, that means he had a heck of a year, and I'm shaking his hand and thanking him for his 2024 and wishing him best in his future endeavors. Because if he plays to that, he's probably going to have a top 5 MVP season, and that would be kind of finding the fountain of youth because Bregman hadn't been there in a while. Bregman was 19th last year in MVP voting. He was 22nd this past season. Back in 18-19, finished 5th, finished runner-up to Mike Trout. He's not that same type of player anymore.
But you always are quick to mention, and it's right. You're not paying him for what he's done. Mm-hmm. You're paying him for what and even if he has a breakout year this year, it might be the last one we see because we remember just what you just mentioned. The last time he had that monster year was 2019, the Trout year when he was in the running for MVP.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so you're looking at 4 or 5 years ago, the last time he did it. If he does it this year, betting on himself, I would bet that he doesn't do it again the rest of this contract.
Yep.
The new one.
713-780-3776. Let's go out to the HRMP listener line. Andy, you're in the Hive for the Bees. What's up, Andy?
Yeah, boy, he put a big old mountain on top of his shoulders when he said he looks to have his best year ever.
Yeah.
That's 41 HRs, 119 RBIs, 296 average, and over 1,000 OPS. I don't bet, but I would lay big-time money in Vegas. He doesn't come close to that. Makes me almost think that Boras got him and said, hey, you need to do this, film yourself working, doing all the batting practice he was doing and on social media, and go out there and tell him that you're going to have your best year ever, hoping that the Astros may sign him during the year. But look, that's 5 years ago.
Yep.
4 years ago he did that, and he hasn't been there. Look, McCormick was a better hitter than he was last year. McCormick, there's no way you pay this guy $25 million a year for 3 or 4 years. You just don't do it. You just got to, we let it. How many people have been let go? And everybody, we let Correa go. We let Springer go. Cole's left. Charlie Moore. I mean, all these people, and what do they keep doing?
They keep winning. They keep winning, Andy.
They keep winning the AL.
You're right. They keep winning. No, you're right. I completely agree with you. Thank you for the call, Andy. Andy's a smart guy, too, because he said RBIs, which I'm always a big fan of that. I mean, he's right. Chaz was a better offensive player, statistically, than Alex Bregman last year, depending on if you want to go OPS metric, 842 for Chaz, 804 for Bregman. If you want to go OPS plus, it's basically the same thing. They just average the average hitter to 100. Chaz was 130, and Bregman was 122. Chaz was a better hitter last year. Bregman hasn't been that player since 19. And the year that Bregman had last year, too, is kind of his new standard. 801 in 2020, the COVID-shortened year. 777 in an injury-riddled 2021. But he followed that up with an 820 and an 804. Like, this is who Alex Bregman is. He is no longer a top 5 MVP candidate.
No, he's not.
And that's okay. That's all right. But you're not going to get 210 for 7. You're going to get Matt Chapman plus a little bit.
Right. I think the only reason that they're sitting there looking at this and looking at the Astros trying to get more is because they are going to try and play at the heartstrings. They're going to try and say, for all we've done, the loyalty, and and we want to be here and finish our career here and do the kind of things that Altuve is going to do here. It's a business. At the end of the day, he's been more of a roller coaster. Last year he was tinkering a lot more. Last year he was changing his swing. He's always gonna be in the video, on the iPad all the time watching his swing. But at the same time, he was up, he was down. When he found it, there were pockets where he was really good, and then he fell off for quite a bit too. So is that lack of consistency worth that kind of money in those years? I don't think so.
I think he's a good player. Like
he's
trying
an above average player.
I would say he's a good player. Like, because with his command of the strike zone, he draws a lot of walks. He plays a really good third base, which is a premium defensive position. It's not shortstop, it's not center, it's not catcher, but it's important. I think Bregman's a really good player. He's not a $30 million a year player. King of Twitch says Chapman screwed Breggy. It wasn't Chapman. It's the market. Like, what was Chapman going to do?
Chapman
Not play baseball this year?
Yeah.
Right? It's the market. The market is readjusting itself. Brian, I interrupted you. My bad.
No. My only pushback to what the caller said, like he specifically said, Bregman's not worth $25 million per year. And maybe that's right. Maybe he's more closer to 21 or 20, and we can argue over the exact dollar amount. But I think the only difference in between what the Astros did in the past, letting guys like Springer and Morton and those guys go, Garrett Cole, and the list goes on, is their farm system in some of those years was more equipped to replace those guys than it is now. And you mentioned earlier in the segment a couple of names that they like at the third base, and maybe those guys are answers, but you're operating with a farm system that across the board from whoever you look at is now ranked in the bottom 5, whereas they were ranked much higher when they were replacing some of those other names. So you have to balance, is Bregman worth this versus can we actually replace him by calling somebody up from AAA?
See, because my big thing is when I say he's an above average player, that means he's good. I just don't think he's great. I don't think he's superstar. I don't think he's worth, especially at this point in his career and his age, I don't think he's worth the kind of money that we're talking about here in the 25 to 30 range for the amount of years that he may be searching for.
I don't think he's going to get it, though. And I think that these deals at this offseason have told you that. Maybe he gets the AAV like Brian's contract where Bellinger, where it's a 3-year type of deal. But he's not going to get the total value of even like what we've heard. Like, no, I don't think 310 was ever on the table. I think that was put out there by somebody who doesn't know ball. The 210 for 7 in the Athletic, like that's still extremely high on the range. That would mean that he has to have a throwback the clock type of season in 2023 to maybe get that. But the realistic range now is Matt Chapman plus a few million, maybe an extra year, Cody Bellinger. That is what the market is telling us that Alex Bregman's worth.
And the ceiling's 25. It's not 30.
I think it could be 30. I think it could be 30 on a short-term deal, yeah. If it's a 2 to 3 year deal,
here.
I think I don't know.
I don't think they're going to give him 30 a year.
I don't think so either. But on a shorter-term deal, the Astros are willing to spike the AAV. Where Crane is not going to love spending is the long-term deal. He doesn't want to put $30 million AAV and be committed to it for years 4 through 7. Bregman has a good year. The market's not there. I could see Jim Crane overspending on the AAV if it's a short-term deal. In fact, Jim Crane did it this offseason. He did it with Josh Hader after they got the news on Kendall Graveman. So I could see the Astros paying the $30 million AAV. A lot of factors. Has to have a good year. Can't can't fall off. The market isn't going to give him the long-term deal, and it's going to come in late February, early March.
Yeah, and I haven't looked at who else is going to be a free agent third baseman next year, but I'm not going to say I'm going to guarantee, but based on who the names are, there are going to be guys out there that are going to be willing to take a short-term deal in that kind of range that are probably going to be similar type players at this point in Bregman's career. Because that's what I'm saying. He isn't where he once was when he was towards the top of everybody's list as a third baseman.